everyone. Welcome back to Greater Purpose. Today's episode is gonna be a little different. I've been sitting here and I've been wrestling with this. But I feel like if we're gonna have an honest, open, safe space, I want to tell you a bit about me, a bit about my story, and I want to be as upfront and honest as I can about everything I've been through and why I created this space. I just want to let you guys know that I appreciate you listening to this. I appreciate you being here for this. Haven't really shared my full story, and to be honest, it's not the picture perfect testimony that a lot of people share. It wasn't one magical moment for me. It's been a journey, one that has just been filled with trauma, heartbreak, healing, redemption. I've been through cycles. I've been through the same things and I've come back. And so I just want to be open and honest about all of that. So if you're listening right now, thank you. I pray that this reaches someone who needs to hear it. I was trying to think about where to start, and I feel like I should just take you guys back to the beginning when I was little. I grew up in a Catholic school. My parents were raised Catholic. From kindergarten to 5th grade, I was surrounded by typical Catholic beliefs, praying the rosary, sitting in the chapel, learning about Jesus. At the time, I didn't realize that everything I was experiencing was the seed being planted in me that will come back later on in the future. I always had so many questions when I was little about Jesus. I'd ask my mom all the time, who's the Holy Spirit? Who's the Holy Ghost? If they're three, how can they be one? I was always just very intrigued, interested. I was always told I asked good questions, but I never felt like my questions were really answered. I went through some stuff later in life. When I got to middle school, my life shifted. In 6th grade, I met this girl who I played volleyball with, and we became good friends. In 7th grade, when I was 12 years old, her brother raped me. And I didn't know who to turn to and who to talk to about it. And when I told someone who I thought would be the safest space I could go to, which was my priest in Catholic school, he told me I was lying. And that absolutely crushed me. I didn't feel safe anymore. Not in a church, definitely. I didn't feel safe in the school. My family ended up pulling me and my sisters out of all of Catholic school, and we stopped going to church completely, pretty much. Around that time, everything was just off and no longer felt like we had what everybody else had in church, if that makes any sense. And honestly, I don't remember much about Jesus during that time. That season of my life felt like a lot of silence. There's one night, though, that I'll never forget. I had the chance to tell my story to some people. I was going to therapy, and I didn't tell the full truth. I held back I think I was scared to be open and honest with somebody about it after somebody else had told me that what I was saying wasn't the truth. I didn't think anyone would believe me. But that night, I just couldn't sleep. I felt so physically sick. And it was like God was nudging me, gently but firmly, to go back there, ask my parents to take me back and speak the whole truth. And the next day I did. Even though I was terrified, I knew something shifted in that moment. Looking back, I think that was one of the first times I truly felt Jesus with me. And something said that it was all going to be okay. That it was going to maybe not blow over, but that we were going to get through it. And that I think was me and Jesus. I just didn't really have that relationship with him anymore, in the sense of I thought about him, but I just wondered why. I wasn't who I used to be. And in high school, I truly became the perfect child. I had all A's, no parties, no trouble. I just did everything I could to please my parents. And honestly, my parents came down really hard on me after all that stuff I've been through. I think they were scared of anything happening to my sisters in the future. My dad worked in the court system. He was exposed to a lot of stuff and other things people had been through similar to me. And I think that they just took all that stress out on me. So I did everything I could to really just like make them proud. I ended up getting accepted to St. Louis University. For those of you that don't know, it's a Catholic Jesuit college, but I just wasn't okay. I had experienced a lot of moments where I didn't really want to be here in high school, and I'd struggled with self-harm before. I hadn't really dealt with it. It was kind of swept under the rug, never really talked about. I actually even had a coach in high school, a volleyball coach, who had seen my arms and made a joke about it. And yeah, that's when I kind of realized like I was on my own. So when I moved into college in August of 2021, I cried. Something felt off, and it only continued to get worse. I only felt safe when I was in church on Sunday nights. And that was the first time I felt like I'd really felt, well, now what I know is feeling Jesus again. At the time, my friends started to pull away from me that I had made first semester. My first roommate dropped out. My second roommate dropped out, all in the first month of school. I was isolated in my dorm. Then, at the end of September, there was a suicide in my building. And after that, I spiraled deeper into depression. I wasn't eating. I wasn't leaving my room. But one day I went down to the chapel to pray that we had in our dorm building. Again, because that was like the only place I felt safe, and I still didn't know why at the time, which seems silly to some people, but I just wasn't in the same headspace about Jesus as I was when I was little, since that happened to me in middle school. But somehow when I came back from the chapel, there was a prayer book left on my bed. And to this day, I don't know who left it, but I think that's what kept me there, honestly. Second semester, I came back to school. I tried to fix myself. I thought I was in control of the situation, but my way of fixing myself was meeting people, partying, drinking, going out. I thought I was better because I wasn't alone anymore, but I was just covering wounds. There were 2 more suicides on campus. I stopped going to class. I was completely numb. Then came the first relationship that broke me. At first, it looked like love. This was after my freshman year of college, but it was toxic. It was manipulative. It was full of pain. I was emotionally and mentally exhausted, isolated from everyone, and I started hurting myself again. I even tried to overdose. And I've seen a lot of testimonies and a lot of stories that people have posted, people have talked about, and how they felt like Jesus sent someone to save them. And Jesus had people, worked through people to save them, and instances like that. But it's hard for me because I never had that. I was completely alone, and I always wondered why Jesus didn't send someone. Or Jesus, I never felt like I really had that moment. When I was in confirmation classes, there were so many stories from our leaders where they talked about the one moment where their entire lives turned around because Jesus saved them. And that never really happened for me. Anyway, yeah, I was in that relationship. I started hurting myself again. And that's when I overdosed. When I overdosed, I called him and he didn't care. He was at work. And that moment nearly ended everything for me. But then I just remember like a little voice inside of me said, don't do that. And that's where I feel like it's like maybe that was my moment with Jesus. But at that moment, I decided I needed to leave this. I needed to just completely separate myself, that this relationship wasn't from God and this wasn't the relationship I wanted to be in. So I went to my apartment because I was at his. I went to my apartment and I just stayed there. I stayed there for a really, really long time. And I didn't eat for weeks. I didn't get out of bed. I didn't leave my room. And again, nobody around me checked in on me. I was completely alone. I had lost like 40 pounds. It was a very, very, very dark place for me. But then one morning, March 13th, 2024, I opened a book called Jesus Calling, and whatever was on that page just changed everything for me. It felt like Jesus was saying, like, come back to me. I looked in the mirror and I just didn't even recognize myself anymore. I was skin and bones, hollow eyes, no light. And that's when I decided no more. I started taking care of myself, eating, walking, reading, praying. It was slow, but it was real. And it wasn't instant, but it was God. I ended up completely leaving Kalamazoo, leaving the school I had transferred to. I moved into a small studio apartment, and every day I chose to fight for my life again. I didn't have friends. I didn't have it all figured out, but I had Jesus, and at the time that was enough. I started listening to worship music and praying during drives, reading devotionals, and I started to see myself come back to life. But there was something in me that still just didn't feel fully healed, didn't feel right. Later that year, around September, October, I slipped again. I gave in to temptation, checked out emotionally, kind of started coping in an unhealthy way again. I was scared to tell my parents that I wanted to drop out of school, so I just went back into autopilot. God didn't give up on me. He never does. I ended up dropping out in December, and I really started to realize that my purpose was what I'd been feeling called to do a year prior to that, which was start this podcast and talk to people. I'd always wanted to work in broadcasting. I loved graphic design, and I wanted to help people, which is why when I went to school, I started as pre-med, because I just knew I wanted to help somebody. And now I'm not perfect. I still have my struggles, but I know who I am because I know whose I am now. This podcast, Greater Purpose, was born from the literal ashes of my pain. And if you've ever felt like your story is too messy, it's just too broken or too far gone, let me tell you, Jesus is not afraid of your mess. He meets us in the darkest places and brings us into light. And I'm proof of that, because I should be the last person talking to you guys right now. It's so hard to sit here and know sometimes that I haven't really had that specific moment with Jesus yet. Deep down in my core, I think that the reason why I never had him work through somebody for me is because I always knew him, and he was always in there, and he was always with me. So looking back in those moments, sometimes it's hard to know that I felt alone, but I know that his hand was on my back that entire time. I know this one's kind of heavy for you guys, but I wanted to share this early on, just so you know what I'm about and what this means to me. So thank you for listening and for holding that space for my story. If this resonated with you, if you're in a dark place, please know that you're not alone. God has a purpose for your life, a greater purpose, and he's not finished with you yet. So don't give up on him, because even if you think that he's not there, he is, and he's just waiting for you to turn to him and say, I need you. Please help me, because I didn't fully surrender to him until a couple months ago. And how much he's worked in me in those couple months has changed my life. He would love to help anybody who comes to him. And don't ever think that you can't come back because you can. A lot of people think that there's going to be judgment and condemnation, and they can't come back and talk to him because he's going to push them away and say, no, you've done too much wrong. But that is not true. He would love to have you back, because Jesus left 99 sheep to save one. And the day that that one came back, he rejoiced and told everybody about it. So just know that the day that you come back and choose Jesus is the day the angels in heaven rejoice, because they just want you to be a part of their family. So when you feel alone and you feel like there's nobody there, and you feel like you don't have a family and that you're alone and you're not loved and you don't belong, that you belong with Jesus in his heavenly family. And if any of you are going through what I went through, please don't hesitate to message me. Message me, email me, DM me, whatever you want, whatever feels comfortable for you. If you feel comfortable doing that, just know I don't want anyone to go through what I went through, because I know how painful that is. And just know that I am here for you and that you are so loved. So thank you for listening to this, because I know this was heavy, but I really appreciate you being here and being a part of this journey. I hope that you guys have an amazing week, and you remember to stay rooted in faith and growing in your purpose, because Jesus has a purpose for each one of you. You're so loved, and you are doing great. So keep pushing. Thank you guys.